The night it began, Ezekiel had gone to bed without dinner. Not because there wasn't food, but because he didn't feel like eating. He was like that, quiet, withdrawn, always minding his own business. At 19, most boys in the village of Umudike were loud, chasing girls or chasing money. Ezekiel chased nothing. He kept to himself, fixed broken radios, and spent his evenings lying on the zinc roof, staring at the stars like they owed him answers. That night, the dream came sharp and sudden. He was standing on the edge of a dark river, moonlight bouncing off its still surface. Then, without a ripple, a long black snake rose from the water. Not hurried, not threatening, just certain. Its eyes glowed silver. Its body glistened like wet charcoal. It slithered across the surface like it was gliding on glass, heading straight for him. And then it whispered, "Ezekiel." The voice wasn't loud. It wasn't even angry, but it sounded like it had come from inside his own skull. Smooth, slow, ancient. He woke up gasping. His shirt clung to his back, soaked in sweat. He sat up on his raffia mat, chest heaving. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Even the crickets had gone mute. He swallowed, only to grimace. The strange, sharp taste of metal coated his tongue. He shook his head and muttered to himself, "Just a dream." But as he lay back down, staring at the cracked ceiling, one thing clung to him tighter than the sweat. That whisper. It had known his name. The second night came like the first, quiet, heavy, suffocating. Ezekiel dozed off to the soft crackle of a lantern flame. But the dream returned. The river again. Only this time, the snake was closer. Much closer. Its body glided across the water with eerie silence, eyes glowing like tiny embers buried in ash. It didn't speak this time. It didn't need to. Its gaze alone felt like a question, or maybe a warning. Ezekiel woke up breathless, fists clenched, his shirt damp again. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't know how. How do you say, "A snake is calling my name in my dreams," without sounding mad? The third night was worse. This time, the snake didn't just glide. It slithered onto land, smooth and deliberate, and wrapped itself around his ankles. He couldn't move, couldn't scream. The weight was real. Not crushing, but claiming. And still, it didn't bite. It just looked up at him, unblinking. Watching. He jolted awake, kicking his legs violently, heart pounding against his ribs like a drum gone mad. By morning, his face was pale, eyes sunken with dark circles. Mama Chinyere noticed. "You no day sleep?" she asked gently while peeling yam. He shook his head, muttering something about heat. But the truth was colder. He stopped talking much, moved slowly, slept less. Then came the scream. His younger sister burst into his room at dawn, tears streaming. "There was a snake in your bed." Ezekiel's blood froze, because he hadn't told anyone about the dreams. Papa Hugo had lived long enough to know when something unseen had begun to follow a person. That morning, as he squatted by a stall grinding dried bark into powder, he spotted Ezekiel hovering near the bitter leaf pile, his eyes darting, lips moving soundlessly. The boy looked thinner, restless, like someone being chased in a dream he couldn't outrun. "You want to use bitter leaf cook or cleanse?" Papa Hugo asked, voice low. Ezekiel didn't answer. He simply paid and left, clutching the bundle like it meant survival. Papa Hugo stared after him, rubbing his grizzled chin. Something wasn't right. That night, the dream came back, heavier, darker. The river was gone. No water. No sky. Only dust and silence. The snake slithered out of the dark, slower than before. Its body glistened like oil, eyes pulsing red. Then it spoke. "Why are you running?" The voice wasn't loud, but it was everywhere. Inside Ezekiel's ears. Beneath his ribs. Behind his eyes. He screamed himself awake, mouth dry, chest burning. Blood dripped from one nostril onto his faded bedsheet. Before he could even process it, a shriek rang out from the backyard. Mama Chinyere's prized chicken lay stiff beside the doorstep, eyes wide, legs curled inward. No wounds. No sign of struggle. Just dead. That morning, Mama Chinyere lit 3 candles and began to pray in tongues. Her voice shook. Her wrapper untied at the waist. She didn't ask questions. She just faced the east window and prayed harder, because something had entered their home. It took every ounce of courage Ezekiel had to walk up the hill where Elder Matsi Tabena sat beneath the ancient akpaka tree, peeling kernels with hands older than the village itself. Ezekiel stood there awkwardly, shifting from foot to foot, until the elder raised one brow and patted the wooden stool beside him. "I've been dreaming," Ezekiel began, voice low, "of a snake. Black. Big. It whispers my name." The kernels dropped from Matsi Tabena's hand. "How many nights?" the elder asked, his tone no longer casual. "4. But it started soft. Now it coils around me." The old man's face changed. Drained. His fingers tightened around his walking stick. 7 nights, he said, staring into the dust. "The 7th night is the crossing." Ezekiel frowned. "Crossing to where?" Matsi Tabena didn't blink. "To the realm of Omirii Demali, the spirit snake of punishment, the one that comes for those carrying hidden guilt or the sins of bloodlines. It doesn't kill immediately. It takes. Slowly." Ezekiel felt the wind around them still. "There is a way," Matsi Tabena added. "A cleansing. By the river shrine. But the whole village must gather. Sacrifice must be made. Truths must be spoken." Ezekiel stood up fast, panic clouding his eyes. "I'm not doing any of that. It's just dreams." Matsi Tabena's eyes narrowed. "Refuse, and you won't wake up from the 7th. But Ezekiel was already walking away, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. By the 5th night, the snake was no longer a shadow, it was a voice. Clear. Deep. Unshakable. "You remember, don't you?" it hissed in Ezekiel's dream, as its body slithered through a river thick with mist. Then, suddenly, the water parted to reveal a girl, young, maybe 10, screaming, thrashing, arms stretched toward him. He couldn't move. He couldn't help. The snake coiled tighter around his legs and whispered again. "You watched her drown." Ezekiel jolted awake, gasping, drenched in sweat, but not just sweat. His feet were wet. And dirty. He flipped off his blanket and stared. Thick mud clung to his soles, like he'd walked through a swamp in his sleep. His breathing quickened. The whisper still echoed in his head. That morning, Mama Chinyer's shriek pierced the compound. She had been sweeping the corridor when she stopped dead. A thin trail, scales, pale and damp, ran from Ezekiel's door to the back wall. Not snake skin. Not shed. Fresh. Wet. As if something had slithered out of him. She called his name, her voice already cracking with fear, but Ezekiel said nothing. He just sat on his mat, trembling, hands wrapped around his knees. Later that morning, cries rang out from next door. A neighbor's baby, healthy the night before, had fallen sick, burning with fever, breath shallow. He was playing near Ezekiel's window, the mother sobbed. People began to whisper. Doors began to close. Ezekiel didn't speak. Couldn't. Because in that moment, he wasn't sure what he was anymore. It came to him not as a dream, but a memory that clawed its way to the surface raw and uninvited. 2 years ago. The riverbank behind the yam farms. The sky was overcast, the air heavy with a coming storm. He and Amaka had argued, something childish, something sharp. He remembered her eyes, wide with rage, calling him selfish, mocking his pride. He remembered pushing her. Not hard, just enough to make her stumble. But the edge was slick. Her foot slipped. Her body twisted. And then splash. She never came up. He had stood frozen, throat dry, limbs leaden. By the time he ran for help, it was too late. The water had taken her. And Ezekiel had lied. She ran away, he told them, tears in his voice, panic masked as sorrow. The village searched for days. Prayers were offered. Her mother wailed by the riverside. But no one knew. No one, except the river. And now the snake. That night, when the dream came again, it was no longer a faceless creature slithering in darkness. This time, when it stared at him, its eyes were familiar, large, accusing, filled with the same hurt Amaka carried that day on the bank. You took everything, it said, voice cracking like reeds in fire. Ezekiel sat up, shivering, clutching his chest. This wasn't a curse sent by the gods. It was something worse. This was justice. And it had her face. The sun dragged its last breath across the sky as Ezekiel shut every window, bolted the wooden door, and placed his back against it like a barricade of flesh and fear. His hands trembled as he poured salt in a circle around his mat, Papa Yugo's last advice echoing in his mind. Salt keeps spirits from crossing. If they are truly spirits. He lit 3 candles, their flames flickering low, as if already afraid of what was coming. His eyes darted toward the corners of the room. Shadows clung too long. The air pressed against his chest like a hand. He swore he'd stay awake. He drank bitter cola, slapped his cheeks, paced. But no matter how hard he fought, sleep crept in slow, warm, and irresistible, like a tide dragging him from shore. His eyelids dropped. The candle flames fluttered once, then vanished. Darkness swallowed the room. And just like that, he was there again. Not in his room. Not even in his village. The river curled around his ankles like a living thing. The sky was red. The air buzzed. And the snake, black, endless, coiled like a throne, rose from the water. Its voice was not a hiss this time. It was her voice. Amaka, you thought the river would keep my secret? Ezekiel's knees buckled. His heart slammed against his ribs. Her voice was not angry. It was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that came just before judgment. And he had nowhere left to run. The dream unspooled like a curse too old to name. Ezekiel stood ankle-deep in dark water, the remnants of a sunken village stretching around him, flooded huts, floating rooftops, torn prayer mats drifting like lost hope. Trees jutted from the water, twisted and bare, their branches heavy with snakes that swayed like vines. Each hiss felt like a whisper of judgment. Children danced in a circle near a mound of soaked earth. At first, he couldn't make sense of it until he saw the crude wooden slab beside them. It bore his name, Ezekiel, a grave. His. Suddenly, the water rippled with intent. From beneath, she rose. Amaka. Her skin was the color of rain-washed ash. Her hair clung to her shoulders like wet thread. But it was her eyes, those burning gold eyes, that rooted him in place. No fury. No tears. Just truth. You have 2 paths, she said, her voice like thunder smothered in silk. Confess to the living, or stay with us. In the deep sleep, where no name is spoken, where no soul is mourned. Ezekiel's knees splashed into the water as he dropped. Please. I didn't mean to. It was a mistake. You pushed me, Amaka said simply, and watched me drown. He sobbed, hands shaking. I'll confess. I swear. She stepped closer, touched his cheek with fingers like ice. You'll wake up, Ezekiel. A pause. A cold breeze circled his neck. But not whole. And then, without warning, the grave behind the children opened. Ezekiel jerked awake with a soundless gasp, his body drenched, trembling as if yanked out of a raging current. The mat beneath him was soaked. His breath came in sharp, broken bursts. His skin felt alien, cold, clammy, as though it had been wrapped in riverweed all night. He tried to call out, but his throat betrayed him, no voice. Only a rasp. His mouth felt strange. Heavy. Wrong. When Mama Chinyere entered the room, she screamed. Her son, her once quiet, brooding boy, was crouched in the corner, limbs twisted in a tight coil, head tilted, unblinking. Like a snake. His shirt clung to his back, plastered with sweat and something slicker, darker. But it was his tongue that made her stagger back. Split. Forked. Flickering from his lips like something reptilian. Chukwu, help us, she whispered, covering her mouth. He didn't respond. Couldn't. But his eyes, wide, watery, pleaded. Outside, the early morning was still. Except for the water. A trail of it, winding like a serpent, slithered from his room down the corridor, across the compound, and out toward the family shrine. Later, when the sun touched the rooftops and the cock crowed again, villagers gathered by the shrine. There, resting at the base of the carved deity, was a folded piece of paper. Trembling hands opened it. The words inside were shaky but clear. I pushed Amaka. She drowned because of me. The dreams are real. I don't know what I am anymore. No one spoke. Even the wind held its breath. The letter spread like wildfire. Villagers gathered at the shrine, eyes scanning each trembling line written in Ezekiel's unmistakable hand. First came the silence, thick, breathless. Then came the reactions. Gasps, cries. Some called it a lie. Others screamed that justice had waited too long. Amaka's mother, brittle and gray from years of unanswered questions, collapsed at the foot of the idol, wailing until her voice cracked. Her hands clawed at the earth. My daughter! My daughter! The elders wasted no time. Incense was lit in thick clouds. Ancient prayers spilled from cracked lips as they circled the compound, begging the gods for peace, for mercy, for a cleansing of the land. Ash and fire danced in the air as if something unseen had been stirred, awakened. But that night, as the moon climbed full and yellow into the sky, something returned. It began softly, like a breath beneath the earth. A rhythm no one had played. A pulse no one could claim. Drumming. Faint. Hollow. Coming from nowhere and yet everywhere. People stepped outside, looking around with wide eyes, chests tight with dread. Children whispered of a snake slithering near the village well. It had gold eyes, one said. And it was smiling. Inside her hut, Mama Chinyere knelt by her son's mat, whispering prayers through cracked lips, her rosary clenched tight. But when she reached forward to touch his blanket, her hand froze. The mat was empty. Only a single black scale remained. And the soft, sharp hiss of something slithering in the wind. To be continued. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, kindly hit the subscribe button, like, and share with your friends. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss what happens next when part 2 drops.